The gymnasium fell silent as the towering general stepped onto the mat, his medals clinking softly against his chest. He'd defeated every challenger for 3 years, Olympians, martial artists, street fighters. None had lasted more than 90 seconds. His smirk was legendary, carved from years of unchallenged dominance. But when the dark-skinned woman in worn sneakers walked forward, something in her eyes made even the general pause. She wasn't looking at him like he was invincible. She was looking at him like he was already beaten. "If you can take me down, I'll give you $1 million, he said, his voice booming across the room. The crowd laughed. They always did. The woman didn't smile. She adjusted the faded backpack on her shoulders and met his gaze. "Get your checkbook ready, General." Nobody knew her name then. They didn't know she'd walked 17 miles to get there. They didn't know about the daughter waiting in a hospital bed, or the medical bills stacked like tombstones on her kitchen table. They didn't know that 3 months ago, she'd been one of the most decorated fighters in West Africa before a corrupt promoter stole everything she'd earned and left her family with nothing. All they saw was a woman who looked tired, who looked ordinary, who looked like she had no business stepping onto that mat. The general had started this tradition as a publicity stunt. Every month, he'd open his private gym to challengers, offering $1 million to anyone who could pin him or make him submit. It had started as genuine competition, but over the years, it had become theater, a way for him to remind everyone of his superiority while maintaining his public image as a man of the people. The money was real, sitting in an escrow account verified by lawyers. But he'd never worried about paying it out. "What's your name?" he asked, circling her slowly. "Amara," she said quietly. "And I'm not here to entertain you." The crowd murmured. Most challengers tried to play up the drama, to make themselves memorable even in defeat. But Amara stood perfectly still, her breathing even, her focus absolute. She'd removed her backpack and handed it to a stranger in the front row, along with whispered instructions to keep it safe. Inside that bag was everything she owned: her daughter's medication, 3 family photographs, and a letter she'd written in case she didn't survive what came next. Because Amara wasn't just fighting for money. She was fighting for time. The general made the first move, a standard wrestler's lunge meant to test her reflexes. Amara sidestepped it so smoothly that several people in the crowd gasped. She didn't counterattack. She just watched him, her head tilted slightly, reading his body the way she'd been taught as a child in her grandmother's village, where fighting wasn't sport, it was survival. "You've got moves," the general admitted, resetting his stance. "But movement won't save you when I get my hands on you." He was right, in a way. The general weighed 240 pounds of muscle hardened by decades of military training. Amara was 5'7" and maybe 140 pounds, her frame lean from months of rationing food to afford her daughter's insulin. Physics said she couldn't win. Statistics said she couldn't win. Every person in that room believed she couldn't win. But they didn't know what had forged her. Amara had grown up in a village where girls were taught to fight alongside boys, where her grandmother, a woman who'd lived through war and famine, had trained her granddaughter with a philosophy that transcended technique. "Strength isn't about muscle," she'd said. "It's about knowing exactly when to yield and when to strike. The river doesn't fight the rock head-on. It finds the crack, and flows through." The general lunged again, faster this time, and Amara let him catch her wrist. The crowd erupted in cheers, certain the match was over. But as he yanked her forward, preparing to use her momentum against her, Amara did something unexpected. She went completely limp. For a fraction of a second, the general held dead weight. His center of gravity shifted forward. And in that infinitesimal moment of imbalance, Amara came alive. She dropped low, swept his supporting leg, and used his own force to drive him toward the mat. The general twisted mid-fall, managing to catch himself on one hand, but Amara was already moving. She slipped behind him, her legs scissoring around his waist, her arm sliding toward his throat in a technique so precise it looked like dance. The gymnasium exploded with noise. The general bucked and rolled, trying to dislodge her, his face reddening as he realized she actually knew what she was doing. He slammed his back against the mat, trying to crush her with his weight, but Amara had positioned herself perfectly, her body angles absorbing the impact without loosening her hold. "Tap out," she whispered in his ear, her voice barely audible over the crowd. "Please, I don't want to hurt you." The general's pride flared. He'd been in combat zones, had survived situations that would break ordinary men. He wasn't about to submit to someone half his size in front of hundreds of witnesses. He threw himself backward again, harder this time, and something in Amara's shoulder popped. She gasped but didn't let go. Couldn't let go. Behind her closed eyes, she saw her daughter's face. 9 years old, diabetic, getting weaker every day because they couldn't afford the new insulin her body needed. The general's struggles were slowing. His air was cut off just enough to fog his thinking, to make his movements desperate rather than strategic. He had maybe 15 seconds before he'd lose consciousness. His hand hovered over the mat, trembling between pride and survival. And then Amara did something that nobody expected. She loosened her hold, just slightly, just enough to let air flow to his lungs, to give him a chance to think clearly. The general felt it immediately, that fraction of release that meant the difference between submission and continuing the fight. He could have used that moment to escape, to regroup and use his superior size to overwhelm her. Instead, he stopped struggling. Because in that small mercy, he'd felt something that humbled him more than any defeat could. He tapped the mat 3 times. The gymnasium went silent. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The referee, a former Marine who'd served under the general, stared in disbelief before raising his hand. Winner by submission, Amara. The general lay on the mat for a long moment after Amara released him and rolled away, clutching her injured shoulder. He sat up slowly, his chest heaving, his face unreadable. The crowd didn't know whether to cheer or stay quiet. Some of them had bet money on him. Others had come just to see him dominate another challenger. Nobody had expected this. Amara struggled to her feet, swaying slightly. Her shoulder screamed with pain, but she'd fought through worse. She'd given birth in a village clinic without anesthesia. She'd walked through the desert for 2 days to reach a refugee camp when war came to her region. She'd survived her husband's death from malaria and rebuilt her life from nothing. This was just one more thing to endure. The general rose and walked toward her. Some people in the crowd tensed, uncertain what would happen next. Would he claim she'd cheated? Would he refuse to pay? His reputation was built on invincibility. What would this defeat do to him? He stopped in front of Amara and extended his hand. "You gave me a chance to keep breathing when you didn't have to," he said quietly, so only she could hear. "Why?" Amara looked at his hand, then at his face. Up close, she could see he was older than he appeared from a distance, maybe 55, with scars on his neck that spoke of past battles. His eyes, which had seemed so hard and mocking before, now held something different. Curiosity, respect. "Because mercy is stronger than victory," she said simply. The general's hand remained extended. Amara shook it, and the gymnasium erupted in applause. People were crying, though many couldn't have explained why. There was something in that handshake that transcended sport, that spoke to something deeper in the human spirit. "I need your account information for the transfer," the general said. "The money will be in your account within the hour." Amara nodded, her legs finally giving out. She sat down hard on the mat, her good hand pressing against her injured shoulder. The general gestured to his assistant, who rushed over with a first aid kit. "We're taking you to the hospital," he said. "My personal physician will check that shoulder." "I can't afford," Amara started. "It's covered," the general interrupted. "Consider it part of the prize." As his team helped Amara to a chair, the general retrieved her backpack from the stranger who'd been holding it. He noticed how worn it was, how carefully patched. When he handed it to her, their eyes met again. "The money," Amara said hoarsely. "It's for my daughter. She has diabetes. The new insulin that actually works. It costs $8,000 a month without insurance. We've been rationing the cheap kind, but it's not enough anymore. She's getting sicker." The general's expression shifted. "What's her name?" "Zuri. It means beautiful in Swahili." Amara's voice cracked. "She is beautiful, so beautiful, and she wants to be a doctor someday. She wants to help people like her. But first, she has to survive being 9 years old." The general was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. "Stevens, I need you to set up a medical trust. Full coverage for a pediatric diabetes patient, including all medications, monitoring equipment, and specialist care. Name is Zuri." He looked at Amara questioningly. "Okonkwo," she whispered. Zuri Okonkwo. The trust should cover her until she's 25. And Stevens. I want the best pediatric endocrinologist in the state assigned to her case. Today. He ended the call and looked at Amara. The $1 million is yours to do with as you need. But your daughter's medical care is separate. She'll never have to ration insulin again. Amara couldn't speak. Tears streamed down her face as the reality of what he was saying penetrated her exhausted mind. 9 months of fear, of watching her daughter grow weaker, of choosing between medication and food, of lying awake calculating how many more days they had before the money ran out. All of it was ending. Right now. Because she'd fought, and because she'd shown mercy when she could have destroyed. The general knelt beside her chair. You taught me something today, he said softly. I've been fighting my whole life. I've won medals and commanded troops and built a reputation. But I'd forgotten what real strength looks like. You could have choked me unconscious. You had every reason to. Instead, you gave me a choice. That's power I've never seen on any battlefield. I just didn't want to hurt you, Amara said. I needed to win, but I didn't need you to suffer for it. That's the difference between a warrior and a soldier, the general said. A soldier follows orders. A warrior chooses their path. You're a warrior, Amara. And now you've got the resources to be whatever else you choose to be. The story spread across social media within hours. Videos of the match went viral, watched by millions who couldn't quite believe what they were seeing. The comments sections filled with arguments and inspiration, with people debating technique and ethics, with mothers sharing their own struggles with medical bills and single parents talking about impossible choices. But Amara didn't see any of it. She was in a hospital bed, her shoulder being treated, while in the next room, her daughter received her first dose of proper insulin in 4 months. When Zuri's eyes focused clearly for the first time in weeks, when color returned to her cheeks and her smile widened, Amara knew that every aching muscle, every moment of fear on that mat, had been worth it. The general visited them 3 days later. He brought flowers and a stuffed animal for Zuri, and something else, a contract. I'm starting a foundation, he explained. Teaching self-defense to underprivileged communities, especially women and kids. I need someone to run the training program. Someone who understands real fighting, not just sport. Someone who knows what they're protecting. He looked at Amara. The salary is $90,000 a year, plus full benefits. And the position comes with flexible hours so you can be there for Zuri. Amara stared at the contract, then at the general, then back at the contract. Why? She asked. You already gave us so much. Because you changed me, he said simply. For 3 years, I've been proving I'm the strongest. But you showed me that strength without compassion is just violence. I want to build something better. And I need help from someone who understands that. 6 months later, the foundation opened its first location in a neighborhood where 3 girls had been assaulted walking home from school the previous year. Amara taught the first class herself, her shoulder fully healed, her daughter healthy and thriving. The general was there too, working not as a celebrity attraction but as a genuine partner in something meaningful. On the wall of the training center hung a photograph from that day in the gymnasium. The moment when Amara and the general shook hands, both exhausted, both transformed. Beneath it was a quote that Amara had chosen. True strength is knowing when to fight, when to yield, and when to show mercy. The greatest victories are those that save rather than destroy. The general added his own line below it. I thought I was invincible. She taught me something better, how to be human. People came from across the city to train there, drawn by the story and stayed for the community. Women who'd never thrown a punch learned to defend themselves. Kids who'd been bullied learned confidence. And through it all, Amara taught them what her grandmother had taught her, that fighting wasn't about dominance. It was about protecting what mattered, standing up for those who couldn't stand alone, and choosing mercy when you had the power to choose otherwise. Zuri, healthy and strong now, sometimes came to watch her mother teach. She'd seen the viral video, understood that her mother had risked everything for her. When people asked if she was proud, she always said yes. But what she really felt was something deeper, a determination to live up to the sacrifice, to become the doctor she dreamed of being, to spend her life giving back the gift her mother had fought for. As for the $1 million, Amara used it carefully. She bought a small house where Zuri could have her own room. She paid off the medical debts that had been crushing them. She sent money back to her village in Africa to build a school. And she saved the rest for Zuri's education, knowing that the best way to honor her grandmother's teachings was to ensure they passed to another generation. The general never issued another challenge. He'd found something more valuable than an undefeated record, a purpose beyond himself. Together, he and Amara built something that would outlast any sports legend, a legacy of empowerment and compassion that touched thousands of lives. And sometimes, late at night when the training center was empty, the general would stand in front of that photograph and remember the moment when he tapped the mat. Not in defeat, but in recognition of something greater than pride. He'd been humbled by mercy, saved by compassion, and transformed by a woman who fought not to destroy, but to protect the ones she loved.